Boa tarde, Maria Helena, Carla. Boa tarde, Silvia.
Boa tarde, doutora Mônica.
Tudo bom, amigas? Que bom ver vocês.
Já podemos começar, professora Carla.
Estou pronta.
Can we begin? Yes, I am ready. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Carla Ventura. I'm the director of a collaborating center of the PAHO and OMS for development of research in nursing, which is located in Ribeirão Preto and is part of the University of São Paulo in Brazil. We would like to welcome everyone to this event called Strengthening the Capacities of Nurses in Latin America and the Caribbean through Doctoral Training, organized with the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and as part of one of our activities in the terms of reference 13, which is part of our work plan, which is contributing to PAHO and the WHO in order to develop training and research in order to improve scientific quality and the curriculum in nursing. I would like to inform you that we are recording this event and that we will have interpretation into English, Spanish, and Portuguese. You will find the interpretation icon on your screen. And now I offer the floor to Maria Helena Palucci Marziali, the Dean of the University of São Paulo at Ribeirão Preto, College of Nursing in Brazil. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very happy to have you here at the College of Nursing in Ribeirão Preto. This workshop, as was explained by Professor Carla, is an activity, is the college activity, and the college is a collaborating center, and we have for 33 years been collaborating with PAHO and WHO to train human resources. We will have our 68th anniversary on August 11th. And throughout our history, we have had as one of our pillars for our activities, quality in scientific training for nurses and the development of technical and scientific competence in health sciences. Since 1982, the Ribeirão Preto College of Nursing as one of the schools responsible for the creation of the first doctoral program in nursing in Latin America has been training nurses that are researchers and nurses that have a doctoral degree, because we believe that training nurses creates the necessary competence for technical issues so that they can take into their practice this knowledge they acquire, and also so that they can occupy leadership in several areas, in ethics, in development of policies, and in the renewal of knowledge. We are very happy to have here several officers and PhDs who went through these schools, and they're now leaders in their own countries. They are trained and they are here with us discussing the future, discussing the innovations and strategies that we can implement together to strengthen the profession. And that way we can implement to train new PhDs. So I wish everyone a very good day, and we will continue starting our first panel, which is strengthening nursing in Brazil and in the region of the Americas. And we have here today, we're very glad to have here Dr. Monica Padilla. She is Ecuadorian, she is a doctor, and she has a master's in public health and specialized in the administration of human resources at the Central University in Ecuador. And she is specialist in the use of human resources in health. And she has studied in Fiocruz in Brazil, and she did her residence through PAHO, and she is also an advisor for PAHO for the development of human resources in health. She works with the central office, and she is now the coordinator for the technical unit of human capabilities for health, PAHO WHO Brazil. Dr. Monica is a great collaborator in this area, and we are very close to her because of her work in Brazil. We have shared several projects, and we have been able to follow all her involvement and her work to improve nurse qualification in Brazil. Dr. Monica, it's a great honor to have you here, and you have the floor. Thank you very much, Maria Elena. I thank you very much for being here. I'd like
Thank you so much,
to
Maria
greet
Elena.
all of you,
My sincere appreciation.
and I'd like to mention
Our
Dr.
representative,
Socorro.
Dr. Socorro Gras, was
She was
invited.
invited for this
Unfortunately,
meeting, and she
she
was
could not be
very
here with
interested
us. She
in
was very interested in
participating, but she
participating.
wasn't able to join. So first of all, I bring her greetings to the group, and then I would like to talk about this topic, strengthening nursing in Brazil and the region of Americas. I have some reflection topics for the group so that we can think about nursing as a profession. First of all, I would say that it seems to me that the training process has to do with the practice in the profession. The nursing profession has one or two central elements for the health teams in the region. Training has a role, and now we are going through this pandemic, so we have been able to see how strong this nursing group is. But we also have to consider that there are tensions, and these tensions have been going on for a long time. We start with basic work, and we have very complex work as well. And we have to reflect on the profession. Where is the profession developing? In what areas do we work? In Brazil, we have worked a lot with the public policy cycles. What is the state's interest in broadening the profession, professionalizing it, improving pay? There are several elements that I bring to our reflection. We need to offer these services, qualified services, but we have to think about it broadly. We have to think it in the context of the health system and in terms of a job market. There are many elements that we have considered collectively and that have to do with the connection between training, job market, practice, and the system demand. Because this creates different tensions that affects the profession and its development. I'd like to mention an experience we had in Brazil, and that has to do with the nursing work and the involvement with interested actors. The professionalization process happens in a space that has a relationship among several actors that define the policies in the country. We have a work team that works with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. We also have the collaborating center in Ribeirão Preto, part of USP, the São Paulo University. We have the Nurse Association in Brazil. We also have the Midwifery Association. We have a whole set of institutions that affect the policies around nursing in the country. And with this group, we have been working with information. Nursing has a position in the country today, and we need to understand the elements that could expand it, that could improve its quality. I would like to talk about this mechanism, which is intersectorial debate. We have different types of information that we have, so we need to think about the policies. Which policies are necessary to reinforce this profession, improve its practice? And in the case of Brazil, this happens in the context of the universal health system, which has several different actors with roles. And today we are discussing the doctoral degree. How can a doctoral degree support leadership among these professions in this profession in the country? We need to improve capacity, and this has to be followed by policies and strategies that affects different areas of the profession. We might be at the maximum level today discussing it, doctoral degree, and we have to consider the distance between the number of professionals that go to higher education and the proportion of those that are technicians. Sometimes there is a great difference. The nursing profession sometimes has more than 76% of technicians. And in this sense, one of the problems in this professional training that is related to strengthening nursing has to do not only with the top training, which would be a doctoral program, but we also have to consider the training on other levels. We need to have a certain level of quality that can really guarantee specialized care by nurses. So the doctoral program is one of the strategies to professionalize this path, and this is important and can reinforce and strengthen the leadership in the country, but it needs to be complemented by strategic tools considering the entire category in the country. There's also another important element that needs to be considered to develop the capacities in the country, which is the behavior of the job market regarding nursing. Nursing has a very broad offer, which generates distortions in the job market. You have supply that is great, but a low demand. And this impacts the pay, and it also creates weak contracts. And something that we saw during the pandemic is that it creates risk for the professionals. And we need to analyze this. What is the role that the leadership should have when considering these job relations? We need to consider this when we are analyzing nursing in the context of a health system. And this has to do with the role of leadership in creating standards, and also working in a job market, a specific job market that incorporates nursing. So we have professionalization is one level, then we have the job market, which is another level, and then there's a third level that is also very important, and we need to consider this when we are preparing the training programs. We have to define the scope for this profession. And globally, this scope has been changing a lot. Many roles are taken by nurses, and this also is an answer to demands from the populations globally. And here we have a question that have to do with the educational supply. We have been seeing nursing moving towards clinical work, working with prescriptions, especially considering chronic care. And this creates changes on the base of the profession. It's essential to analyze this. We have to look at the scope and how the scope is changing so that we can understand the demand, the nursing demand in 2021. And we need to have sometime a different clinical training compared to the past, and nursing, as any other profession, needs to review the training profiles. We have to take a look at our clinical training, and we have to take a look at the skills that are being trained. And this is important to define the profile today. There are other elements I would like to mention. So I mentioned professionalization, job market, and the scope. And we have essential elements that need to be part of the process design. The training processes today have several elements that are being changed. The certification and accreditation nationally and globally, they will define us, and they will create the need to update standards for training, but also for the practice. And after the pandemic, we need to analyze what happened, the pressure on the hospitals, and we have other areas that are administrative and research, and that have to do with intensive care. There's also demand there for the nurses. So this was an overview of all these reflections we have been carrying out. So we have many challenges. However, it's wonderful that we want to go into a doctoral program so that we can understand phenomena in a deep way, understanding the profession, how it is adjusting to a new moment, and how we can, in a specific country, work with the health professionals, with those who choose to be nurses, so that they can reach the level of quality, competitiveness, and so that they can have the job conditions so as to advance. I would like to congratulate everyone for their work, and I believe that these doctoral students can really contribute to research and to the profession in the country. At PAHO, we work with policies, but sometimes we don't have sufficient local actions that really reach specific people so that we can advance. And these are my reflections for now. Thank you very much, Dr. Monica, for your words, mentioning essential elements about training, job market, broadening the practice. All these elements will certainly create a lot of discussion and will help us prepare strategies. I would like to thank you on behalf of all the nurses in Brazil. You have been with us for this long time, and I hope that you continue with us. I know that in a month you will be far away from Brazil, but I hope that we can continue this cooperation for a very long time. Thank you very much, Dr. Monica. And now I invite Dr. Silvia Helena de Bortoli Cassiani for her remarks. Professor Silvia is the Regional Advisor on Nursing and Allied Health Personnel at the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization in Washington. Since April 2013, she has been leading this work related to human resources and health. Dr. Silvia is our colleague here. She was our director. She was a professor here, and she also finished her PhD here in our institution. Dr. Silvia has led the interpersonal training and collaborative practices in the Americas, and she has been working with priorities in human resources, and she has for years been contributing a lot to improve the quality of healthcare. Dr. Professor Silvia, she might be now be a little far away from teaching, but she is still part of this whole training field. Thank you very much, Maria Helena, my colleague. We were colleagues in Ribeirão Preto. I'd like to greet all the staff, students, and faculty in this institution. And I'd also like to greet everyone who was here in this webinar, this event that was organized to discuss strengthening the capacities of nurses in Latin America and the Caribbean. I will share my screen. I hope you can see it. And we will start going into the specific topic. We should mention the pandemic. We have to start with that. We have seen that the countries have the need to have sufficient amount of doctors and nurses. But it's not only the number, it's about having the right skills in order to offer the population the services people need. Even though the number has increased in most of the countries in the region, we still have a shortage in some countries. And we have mentioned this at PAHO. And we have noticed that during the pandemic, many countries had to mobilize personnel very quickly, bringing back professionals that were retired and also mobilizing students that were part of several different programs. We have noticed that since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, there has been a trend to increase migration of doctors, medical doctors and nurses, and also medical students, and especially professionals that are part of specialized entities. 2021 was declared by the WHO as the International Year of Health and Care Workers. And we have to protect, invest, and work together. This is a call to action. This is also on the website. PAHO's website. So this calls on governments to invest more, as well as everyone else, and calls on the investment on training and improving work conditions, as well as protecting workers, also recognizing the important role that these professionals had during these 2 years, 2020, 2021, and we know that this will probably continue for a few years.
This is the situation today in terms of a number in the region of the Americas. Our region has 8.4 million health workers, 30% of the world workforce, and we account for 56% of health workforces. However, one thing that we should distinguish is that in a few countries, the nursing workforce even is higher than 56%. It may reach even 70%. It is a mostly female workforce, as most of us are aware. However, I'd like to highlight the launch of the UN report on the state of nursing in the world. Let me just talk about education. One of them is a request that is made for the nursing training programs to offer the necessary skills for a high quality health care integrated and centered on people. It also asks for nursing schools to increase their geographic and demographic diversities, also taking advantage of intersectorial alliances and highlight in their programs the competencies and the greatest possible benefits from the appropriate technologies. It is also requested of them to strengthen their capabilities, offering and solving problems of infrastructure and clinical practice. And finally, that countries consider the possibility of applying the relevant funding in order to expand and strengthen the quality of nursing training. This is a report that was published and is available on the website. We'd like to recommend all of you to read it. We have also approved, or rather, recently at the World Health Assembly, the resolution of strategic guidelines on nursing and obstetrics was approved. And the formulation of this document reinforces the need to strengthen the nursing workforce through policies. In other words, political priorities focusing investment, education, employment, leadership, and maximizing the contributions of nurses in their work environments. And here you will see that within the education lines, these strategies ask for enhancing the quality of education, sustainable education, a resilient posture on the part of faculty in nursing schools, also special highlight on the teachers training, advanced training for research, and broader responsibilities for the whole of the workforce, including in academia. We've also launched at PAHO a strategic guideline for nursing in the region of the Americas. This document was launched in 2019. This document reinforces the need to invest in nursing training quality in order to meet the needs of healthcare systems. And it also asks for a change in education so as to enhance the capabilities, emphasizing healthcare models focusing people, families, and communities. It also requests an improvement in the quality of training through regulation and the accreditation of nursing schools. And as to research, this document points to the need to prioritize nursing research following the establishment of a national research program advocating funding for nursing research and also the publishing of this kind of research results. This was idealized by PAHO and the collaborating center of the Ribeirão Preto School. In fact, this document was preceded by another document that was launched in 2015 on the doctoral programs in Latin America for nursing. This document is also available on this website that you can see on the screen right now. And this document focuses the low training for the master's and doctoral levels in the Americas, especially in Latin America, with over 70% of programs located in Brazil alone. If we were to exclude Brazil, a study was carried out and it shows that there is a very low percentage of doctoral teachers in nursing. Then you may well ask, what would be the relation between this low number of teachers in nursing with a doctoral degree? Well, we know well that to highlight the role of leaders, for nurses to be able to be apt to collect data and use these data to justify their actions in order to require public policies, we will need research for that. And we do know that teachers with these skills will be able to train future nurses also having these skills. So it is thinking of the quality of education and the future leaders in the profession that we highlight the importance of such training for nurses, not only in nursing schools, but also in healthcare services that will be able to count on better prepared personnel to take care of their population. So this document brings an action plan which follows a few lines of action, some of which are on the screen: cooperation and internationalization, a consistent academic training, consistent with the needs in healthcare, generating knowledge that may be translated into practice, and sustainability. Each one of these lines of action have their own applications at the local and national level with their respective indicators. Now I'd like to show you a choice of actions from this action plan that are specifically oriented towards the nursing training programs, especially at the graduation level. And this is very much related to the context that we are now experiencing with this pandemic that is globally impacting the whole of the population. So what would be the activities selected in order to start a debate with you today? First of all, we've requested a PAHO, a reinforcement, and that there be greater consistency between the work and the incentives to developing researches that will broaden the diagnosis on the healthcare situation in the countries, also increasing practices and innovative technologies. In other words, other solutions to improve the diagnosis for the health situation of the country through the nurses' point of view, and also how to attract and make use of these technologies. Secondly, to increase research projects that may be carried out with the communities themselves. Another one is to support joint initiatives between academia and healthcare services, especially those initiatives that focus on publicizing and transferring knowledge and technology. Yet another activity that we've requested is to develop studies that will guide public policies and health care management, and also to have the research results reach the professionals and healthcare services. In other words, in such a way as to disseminate these results in a very accessible way and well designed for those professionals that are at work. We've also requested other activities, but basically what we'd like to highlight here is that these graduate programs offer studies on the working conditions of healthcare professionals. We have seen during the pandemic what the absences are in this area. In other words, what is the situation of the different countries in this region with regard to nurses? More recently, we've also witnessed a migration of health workers. So we have requested more data showing this greater migration and also to study what the countries have been doing to retain these professionals, also what is being done in equity in health, in expanding the roles of the nurses and the regulation of professional practice. We have seen advances in technology, and we would like to have more information that goes beyond the students' health care. We've also seen the publication of this document, and we are now looking at this list of priorities together with the University of Columbia. We will be receiving the results soon. And here are some trends that we have seen. We have been speaking aloud about the expansion of responsibilities of nurses, and we'll be working more and more on technology in healthcare. And finally, of course, applauding is not enough. We have to require more investments for health workers. Thank you so much, Professor Maria Helena. You have the floor.
Muito obrigada, doutora Silvia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sylvia. You've brought us very important elements as you've presented the actions by WHO with regard to training, qualification, market, and the strategies that can be used to expand the role of nurses, especially with regard to the lessons learned during this pandemic. And of course, these strategies should be really mandatory reading for all of those who are involved in the area, especially in the nursing graduate programs, because we have these very alarming indicators with regard to the situation in Latin America and the Caribbean on this need to train and to have PhDs in this area. So thank you so much. Again, we are now closing this panel, and I'd like to call on the facilitators of the next panel, which will be opportunities, strategies, and challenges of doctoral training in nursing in Latin America and the Caribbean, perspective in the pre and post-pandemic. So this will be moderated by Dr. Olivia Inés Alvarado, who is the president of the Latin American Association of Schools and Faculties of Nursing and professor at the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Concepcion, Chile. We will also have Dr. Pedro Fredemir Palha, who is Vice Dean of the University of São Paulo at Ribeirão Preto College of Nursing, Brazil, who is also a PhD in nursing by this same school. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Bom, boa tarde a todos.
Very well then. Good afternoon. I'd like to greet Dr. Maria Helena Paluzzi Marziali, Dr. Monica Padilla, Dr. Silvia Elena Cassiani. I'd also like to greet Professor Olivia Alvarado, President of Aladefe. I'd also like to greet the other officers here at our event, the coordinators of nursing graduate programs, directors and deans of universities in Latin America and the Caribbean, and participants. Initially, I'd like to present to you what is our proposition to work at this panel. We will be discussing opportunities, strategies, and challenges of doctoral training in nursing in Latin America and the Caribbean, perspectives in the pre and post-pandemic periods. I'm going to say a few words, and then Professor Olivia will also make a brief presentation. And right after that, we shall have 4 questions. 2 questions will be asked by Professor Olivia. We thought of giving you a period of 35 minutes in order to discuss these 2 questions with the participants. Of course, the oral participation by a few participants will be allowed. And of course, at this point, we'd like to kindly ask you to be objective and brief when you make your oral explanations. We thought about 3 or 4 people per set of questions. And for the other participants, you may intervene through the chat with questions and comments. And we're going to gather all of this information and include it in our final document. So after Olivia's presentation, there will be 2 questions. I'm going to ask those questions, and then we shall have a 35 to 40-minute period of time for discussions. Again, in this case, we shall have the intervention of 3 to 4 people. And again, I ask you to be brief and objective in your interventions. And after that, participants will be able to make their comments and questions through the chat. So again, I'm very, very pleased to be moderating this panel. I'd like to say that part, or at least a lot of what I intended to say in these opening remarks have already been touched on by Professor Sylvia and Professor Monica. However, I'd like to highlight a few points that I consider very relevant for us and for a good debate. It was very much emphasized here that nursing is a profession that has been challenged from different perspectives, social and political and economic fields. However, it is a profession that requires a recognition of its practices and principles. It needs reinforcement. Another aspect that has been highlighted here is this scarcity of nurses. There are greater concentrations in urban areas and a lesser presence in rural areas. And yet another theme that is quite important and has been touched on is the migration of nurses into other countries with a dramatic impact on our region. So we need planning to equalize this supply and demand, taking into account the needs and opportunities in each country. Of course, we recognize that the nurses' training oftentimes is not consistent with the needs, the healthcare needs of each country. And there are many situations today where the services and compensation are not attractive enough to retain these professionals. So this is yet another important point that must be highlighted, as it was also touched upon by Dr. Padilla. Dr. Sylvia Cassiani also refers to the documents published on this profession. These are very important documents in which PAHO wishes to enhance the nurses' training, especially through the development of um, practice based studies. So there is this perspective of development and consolidation of graduate studies that will support the transformation and evolution of knowledge. These are just my initial remarks, and based on these, we are going to present to you now the questions that will guide our discussions. We have enough time, and we must actually end our panel at 4:15. So I'd like to give the floor to Professor Olivia for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Good afternoon to all the participants. Warm greetings to Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to thank the invitation by the School of Nursing of the School of Nursing that extended this invitation. I am proud to be a part, to have been a student of that doctoral program. I would also like to extend my greetings to Dr. Lucille, who is the president of the doctoral committee, and also Dr. Ventura, who is working with the collaborative center at PAHO on nursing. And I would also like to thank PAHO on behalf of Dr. Casiano for the constant support to the development of nursing. As a president of this association, it is a pleasure to be in this event that is in direct relationship with some of the objectives to be a space for promotion and development of innovative strategies that have to do with the advancement of education, the implementation of programs at the level of nursing, and also international cooperation. I would also like to present some ideas to address some of the questions, and that is, what is the status of nursing during the pandemic? Much of what has been said and what I am going to say will be summarized because it has already been mentioned by those speakers that took the floor ahead of me. Before the pandemic, we had the need of professional nurses in Latin America, and this deficit was mainly in medium and low income countries. In spite of that, there was unemployment among these individuals, and there was also the contracts were of a precarious nature, and also we had the lack of decent working conditions. This is related to the document of 2020 published by PAHO on the situation of nursing in the world, and this was also linked to the need to invest in leadership and in nursing. So we see that there is a diversity of programs in Latin America and the Caribbean, but there is at the same time lack of consensus as to what a nurse is and also what the professional profile should be. There is a high level of migration that we started seeing this before the pandemic, and it could be because of the lack of means for professional development and the need to have postdoctoral degrees in the various countries. This is in keeping with the doctoral training document, the document on doctoral training for nurses, which again, as Dr. Cassiani mentioned, refers to the existence of 50 doctoral programs in Latin America, 3 in Mexico and the Caribbean, 2 in Latin America, 5 in the Andean region, and 41 in the Southern Cone. But in this region, 72% is in Brazil. All of this makes us think about the urgent need to have a state policy for the development of human resources, in particular the individuals from the field of nursing, which had already been recognized as a key link prior to the pandemic to attain universal access to health with equality, and also the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular for middle and low income countries. But after the pandemic, we have seen not only the fundamental role of nurses, given the leadership that they showed, but also we saw the great level of vulnerability that the health systems have in higher and lower income countries. At the same time, we saw the gaps in the training of these professionals, and we have all of the ones that we mentioned, but at the same time, we should mention the low social recognition that nursing has at the level of the society, and also how nursing ranks below other disciplines among the academic and scientific organizations. And this translates into the inexistence of funding sources to continue with doctoral studies, which greatly should be self-financed by the nurses themselves. There is also a low level of funding for researchers who are part of the doctoral programs in nursing. And this also implies that the programs that have funds are the only ones that allow them to continue to be certified as researchers. The lack of funds would mean that they could lose their certification, and in that case, they need to attract students from other disciplines.
This lack of resources in the short and long term should probably lead to a scarcity in the development of different disciplines, and also lack of involvement in the scientific and technical aspects of health. On the other hand, we must recognize that the pandemic changed the world. We are not the same that we were before the pandemic. Before our eyes, we see different political, social, economic repercussions. Especially as nursing educators, we see that technology now has a central place in the development of the profession, but that the profession itself also changed regarding the leadership for its development and for empowerment at the social, economic, and sanitary level. We must have a state policy for human resources in nursing, and each country's ministries of health and education and work should participate in the formulation of that policy. So we have some questions. How should we maintain a PhD program or a doctoral program in nursing that is properly accredited? What would be the main challenges for the education and for the maintenance of these programs that we have at present? So we have time to respond these first questions.
Le vamos a dar la palabra. Pueden poner la mano.
You can just raise your electronic hand, please, so that we can respond to both questions. Or in the chat, you could also answer questions and ask questions, both.
Acho que esse momento é bastante importante para que a gente faça.
This is a very important moment. I am here encouraging your participation. You might want to speak, or maybe you would like to write down your questions on the chat. It's very important to hear the different opinions from different countries that are present here today. If you would like to intervene, please feel free to. We have Felicia Valente Rodriguez. Could you open your mic, please?
No, Felícia bajó la mano, no sé si quiere. Tenemos también aquí Blas María Cantero Peralta. Blas, ¿puede hacer tu pregunta?
Blas, you can ask your question. Open your microphone, please.
Será bueno escucharte.
It'll be a pleasure to hear you.
Blas María, no.
Blas, no?
Pasamos a María Rodríguez, que
María Rodríguez.
abre tu micrófono, María.
María, please open your microphone.
María Rodríguez.
María Rodríguez,
Puede abrir tu micrófono.
por favor, abra su micrófono.
Está con dificultades. Blas María, ¿puedes hablar?
Blas, María, puedes hablar. Can you hear?
Sí,
Can you talk?
Levanta la mano, por favor.
Please raise your hand.
Para te escuchar.
We are here to hear you, to listen to you. Go ahead, Blas.
Silvia, parece que os microfones estão fechados.
It seems
Looks
that
like
the
the
mics
microphones are
are off. No, they are on. They have to turn their own mics on.
Pedro, até que as pessoas abram o microfone.
Pedro,
Aqui nós temos no chat algumas perguntas.
we have some questions on the chat while people figure out how to turn on the mic, and we can go over those. Edvania de Domenico says that there are important challenges. Many graduates who are working don't want to stop working, and sometimes they don't get leave in order to go into school. And so we have some researchers that are working a lot.
Somebody
Someone
asked
asked
if
if we
we
could
could just place
add
our
the
questions in the
questions
chat.
to the chat. So I'm trying to add them now.
Considerarlas en sus respuestas, dado que estas son
We have typed the questions here so that you can take them into consideration in your responses. We're trying to reach a conclusion as to which are the actions that we will be able to implement in each one of our countries.
Muito bem. Nós vamos pedir para a organização abrir o microfone.
I would ask the support team to turn on the mics so we can hear the people who raised their hands. We'll go back to Blas Maria.
O microfone, é só abrir o seu microfone, Blas.
Blas, you can turn on your mic.
Sim. Vamos então para Hilário.
Let's try Ilario.
Se vocês
Ahora sí hay varias manos.
Sí.
Yes, I see many hands raised.
Ustedes levantan la mano, quieren decir que quieren participar. Entonces, por favor, solo levanten la mano si quieren
If you
hablar.
raise your hands, that means you want to participate.
Dulce
Dulce Barbosa. Dulce, please, go ahead.
Oi, Silvia, você está me ouvindo?
Sylvia, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. It's a pleasure to see you.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon.
Parabéns pelo evento.
Congratulations for the event. I bring a reflection and I'd like to listen to what you think of it. And it has to do with the need for an international policy for nursing career. This includes professors, doctors, and people who work in services. Very few countries have this. So I would like to hear you and listen to your opinion. What is your opinion, Dulce? We would also like to hear your opinion. My opinion is that we need a policy. It has to be an international policy to implement a career for nurses in different areas. The academic area has that, but people who work with services don't have that. Many graduates can't find a place in the job market. So we do need an international policy with standards for the career because we do not have that. But I would like to listen to you as well. Perfect. We heard you. Maria Rodrigues.
Pode falar. Vamos passar por os outros. Hilário Freitas.
Let's move on. Hilário Freitas.
Pessoas que estão com a mão levantada e não vão hablar, barrem la mano, sim? Elvígia. Márcia Baquion. Maria Márcia Baquion.
A Márcia Baquion, ela está perguntando aqui, como
Marcia
fortalecer
is asking, how can we strengthen nursing science and capacities and leadership in the context of grad programs that are multi-professional?
Sim, eu posso fazer um comentário inicial. Eu acho
Would
que
you like
a
to comment?
questão
Yes, I can
da
start.
formação de enfermeiros,
I think that
visando a
this
questão
training issue,
multiprofissional, ela tende
considering this
às necessidades
multi-profession
também da
training,
necessidade do sistema
has to do with
de
the
saúde, né?
needs
Principalmente
of
sistemas
the
universais.
public health
E,
system,
portanto,
especially the
a
universal ones.
necessidade da organização do trabalho em equipe em si,
The
né? Obviamente,
teamwork
eu
has to be
entendo que essa
dynamic. In my
não é uma
opinion,
prerrogativa que é negativa do ponto de vista
this
da
is
formação
not
do
negative
profissional enfermeiro, né?
from a
Ele é, na
training
verdade,
point of
um ponto
view.
mais agregador.
It is a
Especificamente também,
collective
acredito que a
issue.
preparação
I think
dentro
that
do núcleo
the
e da
training,
disciplina da enfermagem, ela se torna
nursing
ponto também
training,
bastante relevante para o
becomes
desenvolvimento da
also very
prática.
relevant for
E nós
the
devemos sim
nursing
ter
practice.
desenho
We do
específico em
need to have
relação
a specific
ao
design
desenvolvimento aí da ciência de enfermagem.
for the
Porém,
development of the nurse
especificidade muito
sciences.
própria que não
There are
necessariamente a gente vê
specificities
também dentro do campo multiprofissional. Então, eu acho que esse
that
é
don't
um grande
necessarily fit
desafio que
into
nós
a
temos em relação
multi-professional field.
ao
So this is a
desenvolvimento da ciência.
challenge
Não
that we have when
necessariamente
trying to strengthen
que as situações
science.
são excludentes. Elas
I
podem
don't
ser
think that these two
situações que vão
situations need
caminhando
to
também
exclude
paralelamente.
each other.
Essa é a minha
They can
opinião.
be parallel fields.
Temos aqui Margarete.
Now we have
Para abrir
Margaret.
o microfone, vocês têm que ir abaixo da onde
You need to
está a
turn on your
imagem.
mic. You will
Tem
see
microfone,
your
é só clicar
image,
naquele
and then
cabo,
there's
aí
a
vocês podem falar.
mic
Sim,
En la mano
on the
izquierda.
bottom part on the
sim.
left-hand side.
Margarete.
Margaret. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am a Brazilian nurse. I live in Canada. I also teach in Canada. I have been for 19 years teaching here. And I would like to mention two topics that were mentioned here. First of all, career, and then science. There is no doubt that we need to start talking about a career. We need to talk to the students when they start in their first term in college. Our students, even in Canada, finish the course with the idea that they will find a job. Very few understand the concept of a career. So first we have to understand the career concept. The students need to understand it so they can choose a field where they want their career to go. The other aspect is the scientific aspect, especially in Brazil with the regional leadership that the country has. We need to teach science methodology in this area. And this has to start in the undergrad program so that we can start identifying talents, potential scientists, as the American universities do. They identify their talents from the first years and prepare these students so that they will become researchers and doctoral students. This is not only a problem in Latin America. Many countries in the Americas have this issue. There is a need for a context in which the nurse can feel free to work. In Canada, for example, we are threatened all the time because they threaten to remove nursing from university courses and lowering these courses to merely college courses. So we have this macro struggle. It is an international and global political struggle because this is what we are up against. We are losing opportunities and jobs. There are two provinces in Canada, Ontario and Quebec, in which students do not need to go to the university in order to follow this profession. So this is also a financial issue. We shouldn't just blame our supervisor in a small hospital. We have a bigger problem and we need to understand this as a career, and we have to start working with this from the start. Our students should be also our colleagues in this struggle. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much, Margaret. We can move on to the next one in the chat, and then the moderators can read some questions in the chat. Sandra Valenzuela, good afternoon.
Un saludo a la Escuela de Enfermaje de Ribeirão Preto. Agradezco la oportunidad de saludarles.
I would like to greet the Ribeirão Preto School of Nursing. I'd like to greet all of you, Dr. Silvina Malvari, and my dear colleague, Olivia, who is here in the presentation. Just a brief analysis regarding the keeping the engagement of the professors in the graduate programs. For us, we have seen a complex situation. This is a weakening or a weak point, because somehow or other, we also have to deal with internal policies regarding researchers. Many times we have a complex situation. On the other hand, we have a lot of competition for jobs, for science and technology jobs. And many times these ministries have not increased their funds, and therefore positions are highly competitive. So we have to work on strategies that are favorable to the distribution of funds. For instance, associations, alliances, and then also to work with our international peers. It is a very important topic that you are addressing. It is needed, and I am grateful for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon, and send you my best greetings. Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you, Sandra. Maria Rodriguez, can you open your microphone? Hilario Freitas.
Felicia Valiente.
Felicia Valiente. Felicia Valiente Rodriguez. All of you can open your microphone. We've given you the floor. This is Amelia from Peru. Hi, welcome, Amelia. Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Silvia. Dr. Olivia, good afternoon. I am Amelia Murillas from the graduate program in the National University of Chicillo. From the standpoint of the university, the PhD in nursing has a lot of space. We have been working very hard, both in Mexico and Ecuador, especially in Guayaquil. But we do not have a point of contact or coordination with the program itself. Talking about the professional category as doctors in health, we don't have that. However, in Peru, we have a law regarding the supply of nursing staff in the regular educational institutions. So this is a space in the both in schools and all educational institutions, both in primary and secondary school. We have courses in nursing, and then we have 3-year programs, and then after that, the graduates of those 3-year programs go to the university. So this is something that we have achieved in Peru regarding this law. And with the new government, we are already working on the requirements so that the schools have spaces for nurses to work on, also in the different factories and occupational places and other spaces. So through the Ministry of Health, we give a special priority to specializations. Specialization is very important for the development of professional exercise and practice. But when it comes to the academic sector, all the universities in Peru require the title of maestro or master. So the time that you spend at the university under the new university law, we see that we have to have a doctoral title in your profession. So right now we are conducting an evaluation at the level of the Ministry of Education so that all faculty, depending on the number of years that they have taught at the university, they probably would go in a lower step in their professional category. It all depends if they only have an associate degree, if they, for instance, if the principal authority there has a master's degree, well, the one that has only a BA will not have the same option. So I'm worried about these professional categories because we have not conducted the proper evaluation for these titles, and we have to have a space because, as Dr. Monica said, to be able to strengthen the capabilities in professional practice, we have masters and PhDs that are giving guidance and training on the capabilities for professional practice. But at the level of the universities, for instance, in the Trujillo National University, we have seen great actions to support the development of the doctoral program in Mexico. We have had 4 promotions from 2013 to 2017, and we are supporting the requirement of nursing programs in Guayaquil, together with other ministries. So, but the most important thing about training at the doctoral level, we have to make this something at the international level so that we have an exchange of faculty members with the support, for instance, we have of the Fluminense Federal University and the Sao Paulo University, that they really have trained faculty for our doctoral programs. And also we have to think about the mobility of the students at the master's level so that they can go abroad, they can go to other universities to get their master's, for instance, in Puebla, Mexico, and then an exchange with Trujillo. So this strengthens the knowledge that we have about this in order to improve the spaces for this training. So how do we maintain accreditation? How can we have a model for accreditation? In the different universities, in the undergraduate, we have to have accreditation for nursing careers, medicine, education, and law in undergraduate. That's compulsory. But then in graduate, we have to have the accreditation of all the doctoral programs. So doctoral programs in nursing is something in which we have been initiating this process of curriculum evaluation to be able to have the necessary tool to start the accreditation of the doctoral program in nursing sciences in the National University of Trujillo. I believe this is one of the main contributions. And then we also see some opportunities that I believe should be strengthened. We have to generate several state policies so that the faculty and the doctoral graduates recreate capacities, recreate knowledge, and this improves the profiles for personal competencies. And then this, of course, improves the professionals at all levels, their performance in health and in other fields. So it's good to have this working group today that allows us to have which are the experiences that I take in the countries to another level so that we can improve things both at the local and national level.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Silvina. Silvina was asking for the floor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all colleagues. Thank you so much for organizing this important meeting. Congratulations, because all of you are nurses, because you have devoted your time, your life, and your efforts to the process of taking care of COVID. I think this is very important. The doctoral programs in Brazil, which are 75% of those of Latin America, are a model, and they have had the support and the model of the US programs, and that's an important achievement. Also in Peru, we have seen the influence of the Brazilian educational policies have allowed Peru to open this field so that nurses and nursing staff can attain the doctoral program. So I tell Brazil, thank you for sharing this, but we all in Latin America take ownership of what you have done. We are very proud of this. But also I would like to say that the countries of Latin America, doctoral degrees are not in the mind of society, and they are not in the social image of education and policy. So it's a constant fight. Doctoral programs in our countries of Latin America, we have about 8 countries that have the doctoral programs. They have been maintained, as Dr. Sangüesa says, they have been maintained through an untierable struggle by the nursing staff, because many times the nursing staff does not receive the support from the educational services or the society as a whole. And then, of course, there's no demand to take care of the health needs. But we all know that even though this is a standalone fight, we are not going to abandon this fight. We have to be aware of this, of what are the steps that we have to give to contribute to the great development of the doctoral nursing staff. In Argentina, in 2010, we only had 2 nursing staff that had a PhD. I was one of them trained at the Federal University of Santa Catarina. I was the second one, and we started walking through that road. Now we have 2 doctoral programs and another one being planned. And we will be forming in Argentina 40 nurses as doctoral graduates. We're very proud of that, but we know that this is a constant fight, and it's a dream, it's a policy under development, and we will continue to struggle for a long time. Also, we consider and understand the importance of this historical moment in the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, and they have all benefited really of the nursing contribution to the care of the pandemic and the scientific evidence that we have obtained during the pandemic. And so this is something that we should not set aside, but we know that this is a gradual path. We see what happened in Brazil in the first times. Brazil did not have 35 to 40 doctoral students the first year. It went gradually, it had a struggle. So something essential that we want to ask, and society demands from Latin America and the Caribbean, is the fact that nursing staff has to have a license, a constant struggle for licensing and specialization, because the development of scientific knowledge takes place before practice.
Once we can establish the specialized areas and also to demand those specialized areas for the nurses to work on critical areas, we will be able to train and have the goal, as well as to build the history of doctoral degrees in our countries. We will always be waiting to receive the support from the US, Brazil, and Canada, because for now we are alone. We do feel alone and we do not have support in our countries for that. It is a lonely fight. That's why I thought it was very important. I invited several nurses from Argentina who are currently participating. One was unable to open up her mic, who are very young individuals with many dreams and who are desperate to receive the highest level of education for the nurses in our countries. But I think it is important to say this aloud. We are alone. We are alone in the area of doctoral degrees in the countries. We do not have policy support. We do not have educational support or the support of the science system. It is a lonely fight. And we are increasingly making progress. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate. Thank you very much, Silvina. This is the situation we have, and that we know we have to continue. We need to continue to work hard, because our unity, and as other individuals have already said, we need international cooperation in the area of postdoctoral degrees, and it is important for everyone to understand, to have this facility. Now, the digital platforms are helping us, for example, to establish agreements with universities, and also to be able to reach out to these countries in Latin America that are still to have a master's degree. And after the master's degree, they will have the possibility to have graduate nurses. But these are steps, as you mentioned, these are steps you need to take constantly. Let me help here. Does anyone have experience with the successful program? Would anyone like to share experience or share with us experience of a program with cooperation or some innovation in the area of the doctoral degree that has helped the nursing sector in your countries? If you do, please raise your hand, activate your mic, and share your thoughts. Pedro, would you like to share any successful experience?
Eu acho que assim a experiência do Brasil.
I believe that the Brazilian experience is an important experience, especially from the collaboration perspective with other countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. We've had great opportunities here through international doctoral programs or with partnerships with other countries. There is a great opportunity for students in Brazil, and this collaboration by Brazil vis-a-vis the other countries is important. So solidarity is an important aspect, especially because Brazil has had a long tradition in graduating masters and PhDs, especially through partnerships. This is a very important point that we are now discussing. We should think about how can we strengthen these partnerships, especially with those countries that have a need for post or for doctoral programs, but are still not able to leverage this as a public policy within their countries. I believe that partnerships improve this. And there's yet another critical point, which is the way how the pandemic experience brought about other possibilities with regard to training. Up to then, training was more on-site training, and the remote learning experiences have been very interesting. And this shows that it is possible to have a great graduate education program via these alternative technologies. In other words, it is possible to ensure the quality of teaching and the education of this new PhD. This is a very important aspect that is establishing itself within the LAC community. So this is something we should take into account here as of this meeting. I believe that we have other people who would like to take the floor. Hilário Freitas, please go ahead. And I'd also like to ask you to be a little bit more objective and brief so that we can contemplate other people and allow other people to take the floor. So Hilário, please. Maria. Maria Vela. Hello, can you hear me? Yes, go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to congratulate you on this event. I am Professor Maria Vera Lucia Barboso from the Federal University in Ceará. A brief reflection, and I'd like to hear our participants' feedback on this experience that we've had with different nurses in Latin America. This experience that we have thanks to this partnership, the agreement that establishes partnership between Brazilian universities and other Latin American states and PAHO. So we have received 2 students a year in our program from different countries. We have had this experience that has been very successful. And now I'd like to know whether our colleagues at the panel and Professor Pedro or Professor Sylvia, would you have any feedback to give us on these students? Because I believe other universities in Brazil are also in this partnership program. We have people from Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, currently 6 students from other countries. And this is yet another way to contribute to our Latin American colleagues' training. Of course, we know this is not much, but if we were to put these partnerships together and the proposition of creating new networks so that other colleagues can identify our programs, since Brazil seems to be the one that offers the greater number of programs, I believe that our role is also to contribute, to make contributions and cooperate with other countries. So I'd like to know if any one of you would have anything to tell us about this one program and maybe others. And I'd like to say that we have been making progress. Of course, we are aware that these selections are not carried out by us. It is by PAEC, but we've been working, giving one vacancy a year, one for the master's degree and the other one for the doctoral program. So I'd like to touch on this experience here, and I'd like to hear from you. Are there any feedbacks on this? We do have feedbacks from the graduated students. Some of them go on collaborating with us and others just leave. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you today. Vera, are you talking about the Coimbra group program from OAS? Yes, the OAS program that offers scholarships. And so this is what we have at our university. Pedro, please allow me to answer this one. This program is the OAS PAHO Coimbra Group program. This includes universities from different countries offering scholarships, graduate program scholarships. It is a very successful program. I have been following many students. However, there is a complaint about the low level of registrations or enrollments from nurses. Maybe it is a problem of publicizing, of disseminating. This program is open to any professional, any health worker, and other areas too for graduate programs in Brazil. So we will be go on publicizing this in our other editions. Thank you very much. Hilario did not take the floor, but now we have Felicia. Ligia.
Por favor.
Hola, ¿me
Sim,
escucha?
Alide. Go ahead.
Muy buenas tardes, profesor
Good
Pedro.
afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, Professor Olivia, Professor Sylvia. It is a fantastic opportunity to be able to gather here in this space for reflection and analysis. It is a recurring topic, what we already heard from Olivia in connection with the challenges that the programs have to survive. It may sound a little bit dramatic when I say to survive, but it is complex, it is difficult. We see significant demands ahead of us, and I am also quite identified with the words of Dr. Silvina. We are quite lonely. And I have a question in connection with the following. One of the weaknesses that I have seen in most of the doctoral programs in Latin America is the ability to have access to external funding. This is a challenge that we have in all of the programs, in all of the countries, and my question is whether from that point of view, PAHO could support us. We know that PAHO has funds that may not be large, but the idea is to have, for example, a fund that is sponsored by PAHO that could be granted on the basis of a competition, could be something important for any researcher that could receive that scholarship. So my question is, what are the possibilities we have so that in the medium or long term, middle or long term, PAHO could provide funding at a probably at a very low scale, but granted on the basis of competition, because that is what the agencies request, and that we can use as a strategy to favor the research of those who are part of the doctoral program. That is my reflection and my consultation. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Ali, for your question. I may answer, but PAHO does not have a funding program, external funding program. The country agencies are the ones that may help you the most. I don't know what country you're from, but this is not a program funded by PAHO. It is not something that pertains to PAHO. that is more related to the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, Science, other funds that the country may have. So the answer is that we do not have that, we do not offer that funding from PAHO. This may be discussed in the future. Maybe resources, financial resources of the countries may be better, the ones that are maintained by, that PAHO has, but are maintained by PAHO, but currently we do not have them. I don't think I identify myself. I am from the University of Concepcion. I am the director of the doctoral program in Chile with the University of Concepcion. And unfortunately, I think that Sandra Valenzuela already mentioned this. Chile has many difficulties because our nursing field is not visible in the areas of science and technology, but this is a fight that has been led by our organizations. Olivia has been part of that, but so far there is no specific space for nursing. And this is my consultation, whether it is possible. I know that resources are scarce, but in the future, in the midterm, or in the long term, PAHO could probably work with us on the funding side. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you. Maria Marcia. I think that this is the time to conclude the first session of questions and move on to the second session.
Yes, we can do that. It is very important. Of course, it is possible to exhaust all of the possibilities, but of course, our document will cover everything that has been debated to bring all of this to the next phase. I believe that we have discussed the main challenges in maintaining these graduate programs. And now we would like to give yet another step into this discussion. Would like to debate with you what are the key opportunities that we can see in order to face these challenges? In other words, what is it possible, or what can we do when we look ahead in order to overcome these barriers that were mentioned here as challenges in the first round of questions? This is the first question. And now the second associated question related to opportunities is, what strategies would there be in order to move ahead and deal and address these challenges? Of course, taking into account the experiences that we've had before, during, and maybe post-pandemic. I'd like to answer both your previous question and
Me gustaría
this one.
llamar
I'd
la
like to
atención que
call your
Canadá
attention to
cuenta
the
con
fact
un
that Canada has a
programa que se
program
llama
that is called
Académicos Sin Fronteras y
Academia
un
Without
docente
Border. In other words,
canadiense es
this means
voluntario para ir
volunteers
a
that
cualquier
are
país a ayudar a
available to
formar
go to
a
any
otros
countries to help the
profesionales en
training
otras
of
universidades. Por
faculty
ejemplo,
in
ustedes
other
pueden
universities. So
solicitar
you
a
can
un
get a
profesor de cualquier
professor,
disciplina
a
de cualquier
teacher of
universidad e
any
invitarlos a cooperar con
discipline
ustedes en un
from
proyecto.
a
Es un país, por
Canadian
ejemplo, que
university.
tiene a un
So
profesor que
that
es
country
responsable de la
is
creación del
responsible
proyecto
for
y
the
este profesor
generation of that
concurrirá a
project. And then
enseñar en
the
calidad de
teacher
voluntario
goes
para capacitar a los
as a
docentes sobre un
volunteer
tema
to that
o asuntos,
university
disciplinas
to teach
específicos,
faculty
de
so
manera
that
que
local
los
teachers can
profesores locales obtengan
integrate the
conocimiento.
content
Es
to
un,
their programs. This is a
es un
zero cost
programa
program
de
that we hope may help
bajo. La intérprete se disculpa, pero hay más de un micrófono
the
abierto. Al
country.
menos
The
pueden
host
ofrecer.
country should take care of hosting that teacher, but the teacher is not compensated. It's a totally voluntary initiative, and it is the Canadian program Academia Without Borders that will fund his traveling expenses. And the second answer, or the answer to the second question, I'd like to tell many of the participants here, they may not be aware of this, but I know that the Ribeirão Preto College does know. I have launched a questionnaire on the expansion of a program. I've received replies from 9 countries in the Americas, and now we are in the process in March or April to launch a research action study to look at how these different nursing ideas can be converted and translated from one country to the next. So we are not focusing on research alone. We are looking at nursing knowledge.
Além de nós, a sociedade não conhece que o enfermeiro é um produtor de conhecimento.
Because society does not recognize that nurses are a knowledge producer. And we will be talking to you soon. This project seems to be a very daring project. However, we have received positive feedbacks from many countries who believe that it may be successful. I'm going to include the data on this program here on the chat. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share this information with you. Thank you, Professor Margaret. We have Edgardo.
Buenas tardes. ¿Me escuchan bien?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? My name is Edgardo Ortega. I am a doctoral student at the National University of Colombia, and I am working with the Talent Development Unit within the government of Colombia. I thank you for this space, this opportunity to share my thoughts with you, Dr. Olivia and Pedro. Special greetings from Colombia. And just to add to this discussion, I think that I have just a comment and also to share an experience that we are currently having in Colombia, and that is that when sharing all of those challenges, problems, and difficulties in the area of training for nurses, Colombia, starting in 2019, started to work with other sectors, that is to say, with the trade unions, associations, and nursing associations in general, to try to determine a roadmap to face the situation without knowing that in 2020 we would be facing the COVID-19 pandemic. And mainly, and in spite of all of these challenges arising from the pandemic, we continue to work. And let me share with you that the country, also based on some recommendations by Pedro and the recommendation of other participants, we're taking to the realm of public policy labor conditions. We worked in an expeditious manner with all of the organizations, with the schools of nursing and the National Association of Colombian Nurses, the ethical nursing courts, and with tribunal, and with the Ministry of Health, and as well as nursing student associations. And this is key. It is a priority to be able to reach a consensus at the national level, taking into account the points of view of all of the actors. And we have already agreed on the first exercise that we have called the National Policy for Nursing Talent in Colombia. This is a strategic plan 2020-2030. And the main goal is to develop 3 general lines of work, or strategic lines. The first one has to do with the work conditions for nursing. Second, quality development of nursing resources, and third, the visualization and leadership of nursing. As part of this work, I would like to mention that in the area of nursing education development, we are also agreeing on the options we have for the structural projection of nursing. We already have some initial diagnosis as to the human talent that has been developed and trained in the area of nursing that is within reach for the country, and we're also looking for the various strategies. I just wanted to share with you this great experience and also to express with you that this is something that has to be recognized by the nurses. This is something that we have agreed with the countries. It could be the beginning of a transformation in our country and also how we can change this in the region. Thank you. Thank you, Edgardo, and I think that you have summed up and what our participants were saying as to the need to agree at all levels to be able to have a policy, a state policy in connection with the human resources in the area of nursing. I think that many of the individuals who have written to us and that have also talked to us today have also shown those strategies. And this is also related to what Pedro said, the solidarity in each of our countries, and also to be able to incorporate the students who are part of the practice and also teachers associations so that we can all participate. Each country has a different situation.
Okay,
Boa
Andrea,
tarde,
por
estão me
favor.
ouvindo bem?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Primeiro, eu quero
Yes.
parabenizar, né, por
First of
esse
all, I'd
evento.
like to
Estou achando, assim, muito
congratulate
boas
you
as
for
falas.
this event.
Eu
Very
queria
great
contribuir um pouco, né,
presentations
a
and
professora
comments.
Silvia
I'd like to
pediu
make
exemplo
a
de experiências
contribution.
exitosas, o
Professor
professor Pedro
Sylvia
colocou sobre os
asked for
desafios, né? Eu sou
successful
coordenadora do programa de
experiences
pós-graduação em
and
enfermagem
challenges.
fundamental,
I
né, da Escola de Enfermagem de
coordinate
Ribeirão
the
Preto.
graduate program at the
E assim, a
Ribeirão
gente tem,
Preto
eu
College
tenho
of
que
Nursing.
colocar para vocês, né, que
I'd
os
like to
programas de
say to
doutorado
you that
credenciados, né, mais do que
our
serem credenciados, a gente
accredited
precisa buscar
programs, more than
mantê-los em alto patamar, né,
accreditation,
no
we
meu
have
ponto
to
de vista. E
keep
para isso a
up
gente precisa investir
their
nos
high
estudantes, nos
level, and to
docentes.
do so we have to invest
E
in
como que a gente
students
investe, né? O
and
que o
in
programa de
faculty. And
pós-graduação em
how do we
enfermagem
do
fundamental tem
this?
feito, né?
What
A
have we
gente
been
tem
doing at
buscado assim,
our
incentivar os
program?
alunos, né,
We
a
have been
participarem de
trying to
processos de
incentivize
internacionalização, captação
students
de
to take
recursos,
part
né?
in
E
international
temos tentado oferecer
fundraising
disciplinas e cursos
projects. We
também
have been trying to
com
offer
rigor, né,
disciplines
teórico e
and
metodológico
subjects with
maior, sempre maior, né, sempre
theoretical and
tentando alcançar a maior
methodological
qualidade.
solidity
Então,
and
assim, o que que nós
rigor
temos percebido,
to
né? Que a gente
ensure
tem tido
high
egressos,
quality.
assim,
So what we
bastante,
have
assim,
seen
bem
is that
sucedidos,
we
né?
have had
Egressos que a gente visualiza que estão aí
successful
ocupando altos cargos aí, né,
students.
no
They
cenário
leave
nacional e até
the
internacional.
training program
E
and
que,
then
assim,
go on
apesar
to
dessa situação
occupy
política
high
econômica que a gente tem
posts and
vivido, né?
jobs at
Que
the
não tem
national
sido
and
fácil aqui no
international
Brasil, acho que
levels.
todo mundo está
And in
sabendo
spite of
disso,
the
né?
pandemic,
A
something
gente
not
ainda continua
easy
incentivando,
in
né, os
Brazil,
alunos e
as
os
you know,
docentes na
we
captação
go
de
on
recursos e a gente tem tido
encouraging
vários
faculty and
profissionais e
students
alunos
to
contemplados nos
take part
editais,
in
né,
the
disponíveis aqui no
fundraising
Brasil, que
initiatives, and
possibilitam a
we have seen
internacionalização,
some
favorecem aí
successful
a
cases
publicação de
where it is
artigos também, né,
possible
em
to
periódicos bem
publish
indexados, né?
articles and work
E, além disso, eu entendo que os
in
programas de excelência, né,
interesting
aqui nacionais, né, como é o caso do nosso
publications.
programa,
Furthermore,
eles podem
we
facilitar
also see that these
processo do doutorado,
programs
né, para os
can
estudantes, na
make the
medida
whole
que a gente pode
doctoral
incentivar a
process
participação e a gente
easier.
incentiva, né, nas
We
redes de
can
pesquisa,
incentivize their
incentiva para que eles
participation and
continuem na carreira
involvement
docente,
in
né,
research
fortalecendo aí a
networks,
pós-graduação em
so they
diferentes
will go
realidades.
on
Então,
strengthening
eu
their
também
teaching
faço um comentário
careers.
parecido com o da
I'd
professora
also like to
Margarete lá do
make a
Canadá, que o
comment
programa tem
very
estabelecido
similar to
alguns
the one
convênios e
by
feito
Professor
de
Margaret
inter,
in
né, o
Canada.
inter,
Yes, we have
no
had
sentido
programs
de
that
ser solidário com as instituições, né,
have
que
been
merecem aí,
working
que
in
precisam
solidarity with
dessa
those
capacitação, dessa
institutions that
formação, né,
need
dos seus
this
recursos humanos,
training,
né, então
that
assim,
need
nós temos
their
trabalhado muito na CPG, todos os
human
programas aqui da
resources
Escola de
training.
Enfermagem,
We
no
have been
sentido
working a lot
de atrair
at
bons
our
alunos, né, que
school,
também foi colocado
trying to
aqui, e também,
attract
gente, de
good
usar o que
students
nós,
and also
o que a pandemia nos
trying
trouxe de
to
bom, né,
make
reconhecer
use
que também é um desafio para a
of
gente,
the
tudo que nós estamos
benefits
passando,
actually
mas que
of
a
the
pandemia trouxe
pandemic.
de
In other
bom,
words, one thing,
algumas
a
questões
positive
que nós vamos poder usar
aspect
para o
of the
futuro, né? Por
pandemic
exemplo, a questão,
is
não sei, de fomentar mesmo a internacionalização por meio
this
do
issue
recurso
of
online, né?
incentivizing
De cursos online. Então, acho que a gente
internationalization
tem que
using
valorizar também
technology.
as coisas boas que
We
a
must
internacionalização que a
value and
pandemia
take
trouxe.
advantage
E aí o
of the
programa
positive
fica à
aspects by
disposição,
the
se
pandemic.
vocês também precisarem de alguma coisa, a gente está à disposição aqui no Brasil, né,
And
na
if you
Escola de
need
Enfermagem,
anything, we are here
para o que
available
vocês
to
precisarem. Então, muito obrigada
assist you with
pela
whatever
possibilidade
you
de
need.
participação.
And thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Andrea. You mentioned something else that is also important. Even in difficult times, even in difficult financial times too, we can continue advancing and increasing the quality in the programs through other strategies. And it is an important time to talk about this. Now we have Francisco Javier. He's the next one. If he's not here, we can move on to Viviane.
Buenas tardes, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, sí.
Good afternoon, can you hear me? Thank you so much for this event. It is so interesting to hear all the topics discussed. Olivia, Pedro, Dr. Cassiani, my greetings. I am from Constitución University from Chile, and I totally agree with what Dr. Silvina Marvalis has said. I think one of the potential fields for nursing is to work on the commitment by the faculty to continue to advance. I say almost as a personal struggle to continue to have this doctoral training in our universities. However, I think we have many challenges and many weaknesses. Through time, we have to recognize how Brazil has tried to support the rest of Latin America with the viability of this program for doctoral formation everywhere. So we want to advance in some issues that have to do with the establishment of consortia throughout the universities so that we have a more powerful weapon, so to speak. Undoubtedly, we have many challenges. We have different sets of quality rules. We have circumstances that are totally different. Yes, it was already. Dr. Cassiani mentioned PAHO does not have any funding for a research program, but I would like to know what would be the influence of PAHO in the different countries to be able to strengthen this framework? How can we access the faculty members? How, and then I say, talking on behalf of Chile, we don't have a recognition in the level of that nurses should have in healthcare. The role of nurses is always recognized as somebody who can give assistance to the health of the population. So my concern is really centered on the establishment of policies that are appropriate so that all of these policies are recognized or recognize the role of the nursing profession. On the one hand,
yo creo que una de las estrategias es
we
como
have a strategy that would be like mapping and creating a vision at the Latin American level. What are the strong points and what are the strengths to be able to enlarge these efforts? We see that Bajo is very strong in the research of health workers, but I know there probably should be other areas of intervention, something that can lead to the formation of research groups to be able to have joint programs and joint programs that are financed, because many times we go into research programs, but then we finance this with our personal finances and not institutional funds. So we have to have some evaluation work, specifically targeting this profession and then the assignment of resources or the allotment of resources. Thank you. Sayo, could you please answer?
En el año de 2015-16.
When we launched the nursing document in 2015-2016, the document was evaluated by the Ministry of Health of all the countries.
En el borrador de
and the draft that we sent to the ministries was sent with the intention of having the ministries contribute to the preparation of this Bajo document. But this was drafted for one of the directive council meetings at Bajo. We also held a series of meetings with nursing personnel in the different workshops that we held in Latin America and the Caribbean. But the topic here is doctoral training. But at the Ministry of Health level, there's always concern. They always ask, what is the contribution of doctoral programs and the nurses that have these doctoral programs? How can they better care for the needs of the country? So a suggestion that we have is to say that Bajo has regional offices, country offices in all the region, but also it is a strength to have the nursing group preparing all of these presentations and to invite other actors to discuss this topic, to see so that the ministry is informed of what is the contribution of the nursing personnel with doctoral training, what is the capability that exists to form professionals of higher level of skills for the country. Because many times nurses are alone. So we need to strengthen this leadership of the nursing profession. There are many leaders in nursing in the countries. So we have to search for information. We have to actually make clear which is the contribution of nursing staff to the healthcare of a population in a country. And how can we as nurses contribute to meet all the needs? The pandemic opened a tremendous crisis, very terrible crisis, but it also opens some spaces because we have to join forces with the academic sector, with other countries, now that we have the opportunity to have several countries interested in this, to have joint work within a country itself, and from there go to the decision makers, go to the research staff, go to the Ministry of Health, to the Ministry of Education and others, and then show them through the leadership that we have how nurses with better trained and with more capabilities for research can care of for the population's health in the country. I think this would be a strong point to negotiate inside the country, because nursing is looking for more strengths in the country.
De vuelta a ti, Pedro o Olivia.
Pedro or Vivian? Yes, I totally agree with Sylvia. I believe we have to look for the strengths of each country. Yes, we are alone, but we also know that we have to mention what is the impact that we can have on public policies. And then one of the big conclusions of this panel is that we should think in the needs that we have to join in partnerships, to join for graduate programs. And then in the 16th conference that will be held from Aladefe, we will be inaugurating postgraduate or graduate programs in nursing. We will promote partnership. We will promote the inclusion of the students in the different disciplinary contents. And each one of the coordinators of the graduate programs of Latin America and the Caribbean will be receiving an invitation to participate in this network of cooperation that will be inaugurated in October of this year, because we also from Aladefe want to contribute so that the network continues to be autonomous.
Obrigado, Olivia.
Thank you, Olivia.
Yes,
I think our time is up here for this panel. I just like to say that it was very productive. We had very important remarks about challenges, opportunities, about the future of nursing during the pandemic and post-pandemic. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things that are very important so that we can prepare a report later. So we should think of the career as an international career, but we should also incentivize nursing science, considering the contributions to science and methodology. We should also consider implementing an international political movement. This is important. We need to articulate post-graduation with the health systems. We need to connect these two ends, and we also need to connect Latin America with doctoral programs in Brazil due to the Brazilian experience. The country has experience training doctoral students, and This is very important. Another topic mentioned was the idea that we need to overcome barriers to external financing. This is crucial to develop doctoral programs in several countries. We also have PAHO's participation as a channel to connect countries. We have the strengthening of nursing networks and opportunities that come up when the nursing associations are strengthened within the countries. Well, we have also the agreements for joint work. This also creates the possibility of connection and strengthening research groups with financing. I believe these are the topics that I heard. These are my notes. I don't know if Olivia has anything else.
Se ha mencionado. La parte muy importante de una de las primeras.
Bem, então. Muito obrigado, então.
Yes, they are the same points that
Thank
you
you very
mentioned.
much. I don't know if Professor Sylvia would like to mention something else. No, that was it. Pedro, thank you.
Sí, no, que una de las primeras personas que faló, no sé si me escucha. ¿Me escucha?
Can you hear me now?
Sí, escuchamos.
Está. Una de las primeras personas que faló fue indicar una política internacional.
One of the first people who talked.
Es necesario que la política sean nacionales, porque cada país tiene una diversidad. Entonces, es mejor empezar por tener una política nacional y luego, una vez que ya haya una unificación a nivel de las educaciones. Porque
once you have unification in the education sector, because there's a diversity of study curricula in nursing, that's what we have to face. And then after that, as Pedro and I have discussed, if we do not have an undergraduate, a good undergraduate education, it is very difficult to have master's and doctoral studies. So we have to concentrate on the undergraduate and then move on.
Obrigado, professora Olivia.
Thank you, Dr. Olivia. Professor Carla Ventura. Thank you, Professor Pedro. Professor Olivia, Dr. Sylvia. Now we will start our last session.
Síntese da discussão.
We will summarize this debate, and I'd like to invite Dr. Dawn Roberts, who's the director and head of the School of Nursing of the University of West Indies at Mona. That is a PAHO WHO collaborating center for nursing and midwifery development in the Caribbean, Jamaica. Dr. Dawn, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody from warm Jamaica. Well, I would like to congratulate you on an excellent afternoon of discussion, a very important discussion. And it is my pleasure to be a part of the team that will be summarizing what we discussed today. So we had two main questions, I think, to answer. I am unable to start my video. Today was a holiday in Jamaica, and so I'm at home, and my background is not conducive. So please forgive me for not using my video. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So we had two primary questions to answer today. What are some of the challenges related to doctoral education in nursing in Latin America and the Caribbean? And what are some of the opportunities? We were provided with a context from Dr. Fadila and Professor Cassiani and Dr. Pedro. I call him Dr. Pedro. And in the context, what we recognize is that from the perspective of WHO and PAHO, there is an agreement that there is need for strengthening nursing professionalization through doctoral education. That's without question. However, there are many gaps between that policy direction and what is the existing reality. Some of the gaps that were identified today, and I'll mention a few, were policy gaps. Looking at internal policies, what are the local or state policies that prevent the development of doctoral education? For example, we had one example coming out of Canada whereby nursing education, it was felt, can be lowered to the college level rather than being advanced to the university and doctoral levels. And that was one example where we could see that a local or state policy would challenge the advancement of professionalization through doctoral education. Importantly, one of the things that I reflected on coming from our local context is that in an attempt to increase the training and education of nurses as a way of filling the nursing shortage gap, the emphasis is being placed on undergraduate education and not on graduate education. Retention strategies are being, migration strategies are being focused mainly on training more undergraduate students. And so shortening programs is being seen as a strategy for training rather than increasing and strengthening the quality of nursing education. And that's an internal gap, policy gap that we need to address. And then there are international political gaps. So again, whereas we see from the strategy for development of nursing and midwifery in Latin America and in the region of the Americas, there's obviously a need for us to strengthen nursing education at the doctoral level. However, international political contextual differences is a challenge. Another gap is a funding gap. So there's gap in relation to funding for training, funding for research, and funding for the retention of nursing talent. So there isn't funding that is being fueled into training and educating doctoral candidates. And so one of the challenges that we heard coming out of, I can't remember if it was Chile or Brazil itself, was that there's a reduced access to graduate education because many of the professionals who wish to access graduate education are working and have to work, cannot get study leave in order to go and get trained. In Jamaica and in the Caribbean, we have that same problem, whereby nurses who would like to access doctoral education cannot afford to do so themselves, cannot access sponsorship, and so they have to work, and so they opt to work in order to live rather than, you know, go and get trained at the doctoral level. There's funding gaps in relation to research and funding gaps in relation to retention of nurses. The compensation package that nurses receive is so low that nurses are opting to leave the Caribbean to go and earn abroad rather than stay home and seek education. Another challenge to doctoral education is the perception of professionalization, where there's a lack of consensus about what nurses look like, what's our profile. A specific point that was raised earlier was that the social image of nursing does not include doctoral education. And so there is need for us to correct that. Who is it that presents that social image of nursing? If there's a perception of our profession that we don't need doctoral education to give care at the bedside, then that is a big problem. That is a problem that we have to address through our nursing networks. There are also data-driven gaps. Data-driven gaps in that we don't know enough about the changing scope of nursing practice, the changing professional dynamics within our professions, and how does this fit with interprofessional education. Right now, there is need for us to engage in interprofessional education, but the question was asked, does this threaten our own professional identity? And finally, in terms of the challenges, the digital transformation, how prepared are all of our contexts for digital transformation? And COVID-19 has really escalated the opportunities for digital transformation. How can this transformation be leveraged so that we can advance graduate nursing education? So that's my summary of the challenges that we identified today.
Muito obrigada, doutora Dawn.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dawn. And now I would like to invite Dr. Oscar Osho, who is the director of the nursing school in the West Indies at St. Augustine, and he's also the director of APAHO WHO Collaborating Center for Nursing Leadership and Policy from Trinidad and Tobago, and he will talk about the Caribbean perspective. Thank you very much, Dr. Ocho.
Thank you so very much, Carla. It's so good to see you. Sylvia, Pedro, Monica, and all the panelists who participated in making today's session a very productive and a successful one. Like my colleague Dawn, today is a public holiday in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are extremely delighted that the Caribbean was included as part of this dialogue. But I want to start with positioning the context of the Caribbean against the background of, I think it was Monica's presentation when she looked at the critical elements. Now, one of the big challenges that we face in the Caribbean is that nursing is not viewed as a profession. Nurses are viewed as technicians. And I know this is not different to a lot of other jurisdictions or other countries in Latin America. But the critical issue that we must contend with as we look at the professionalization of nursing, bearing in mind that as a region, the Caribbean region, the governments of the Caribbean agreed since 2006 that the entry requirement for basic nursing practice should be the bachelor's degree. And yet, as a Caribbean body, we still have diplomas, associate degrees, and bachelor's degree that at the end of it, whether you do a diploma, associate degree, or bachelor's degree, there is one standardized licensing exam. Now, one could understand that different levels of certification should result in different levels of content. But how could we then have one licensing exam where persons would be exposed to different levels of content? And herein lies a big challenge as to when will we be able to achieve the professional status and move from how we are viewed as technicians. Another critical issue, which was also highlighted by Sylvia and Monica as well, is the link between human resource for health. And how do we link the important facets or elements between training, capacity, and policy? Now, COVID-19 has brought to the fore that what is required is a greater emphasis on public health. But we do know that within the context of the Caribbean, we are so heavily dependent on preparing students to function at the tertiary and secondary levels of care. Sorry. So if the emphasis of training is on secondary and tertiary levels of care, how responsive will or have we been or can we be in ensuring that the products that we are creating through our education programs are fit for purpose? And I think that's important, but it also speaks to what are the core levels of competence that we should be developing among our student population from the undergraduate right up to the graduate level. But there was another important point that was raised as we looked at the key elements. How do we define quality? One of the things that is important is looking at the success rate of our students, sorry, when they would have enrolled or registered in our various programs. But critically, after people would have successfully graduated from their programs, how has that contributed to a change in practice? So take, for example, in a lot of our programs, research is a critical element, or research is a critical part or a core course that every student must participate in. But at the end, what happens to those research projects? they end up as academic outputs simply to complete the academic requirement, and they are not moved any further because very often students complete the academic assignment, but they may not necessarily have developed the core understanding and competence to translate this. And if we are to move to the doctoral level of education, which is critical, it must then necessitate that from the foundational level, we create the opportunities where students must see the importance of research output to inform practice. And then there's the whole issue of how are we going to relate to, as academic institutions, the demand versus the supply argument. Now, the state of the world nursing, as Sylvia clearly pointed out, it speaks to the whole issue of how are we going to engage and expand opportunities for individuals to ensure that there is geographic as well as demographic diversity. Now, that is extremely important because what we are seeing is that while many of our persons in the Caribbean seek opportunities to prepare themselves academically, what happens at the end is that they're being lost to the migration challenge, which is a very critical challenge facing us in the Caribbean because the international organizations are willing to invest in their employment, but not their training. And therefore, as I come to the end, looking at some of the challenges and opportunities, I want to start off with a critical issue that was raised by one of the attendees, Sylviana, when she argued that doctoral programs are not on the minds of most people. And I think that is a challenge we face in the Caribbean. And why is that so? When there is, as far as I am aware, there is only one nurse in the Caribbean who functions at the policy level as a government chief nursing and midwifery officer with a doctorate. So if someone could become the voice of nurse policy within the context of the Caribbean without a doctoral degree, we have to ask ourselves, will there be a vested interest in ensuring that this is pushed? And I'm saying yes, and this is where academia as well as policy need to ensure that they come together to discuss this as a critical policy issue so that the policymakers will understand that we are not just churning out people with higher degrees, but we are developing levels of competence to change the landscape of health systems as a whole. Another critical issue as we relate to challenge and opportunities, which was highlighted very well by my colleague, Dr. Monroe, is what are the supportive frameworks? And this was again reinforced by some of the attendees in that people want to study because they recognize the importance of evidence-informed practice. But while there is an importance of evidence-informed practice and the importance of ensuring that people are exposed to higher learning, very often these nurses are not supported by their supervisors, because in some cases, their supervisors feel very threatened because they will become more academically qualified than their supervisors, which can create tensions. But more importantly, very often after these persons are trained, opportunities for promotion is extremely limited. So what's the next step? Migration. And the final point I wish to raise as challenges and opportunities was highlighted to my mind towards the end and threaded throughout the presentations. What and how are we going to measure the impact of doctoral degrees to the profession? To my mind, this is the critical question that has to be answered as we look forward to ensuring that the investments that we are creating is of value, in that will those who are exposed to higher learning, what are the core competencies that they will develop as it relates to translating knowledge into evidence, translating evidence into policy, as it relates to developing position papers and articulating their posture and building networks with partners, like, for example, the University of Brazil at Ribeirão Preto. They have been reaching out to us as a Caribbean people, trying to see how they could improve doctoral training. And we have not had the level of buy-in from the policymakers when something is available. And I want to thank Carla and Prof. Gear and the others for their support in making these things available. But all is not lost. There is hope. And I think that this is an excellent opportunity for us to continue to build and create the dialogue and ensure that there continues to be cross-fertilization of academia and policy to ensure that investments in doctoral education is not lost. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Dr. Oscar. Então, agora nós vamos...
Thank you very much, Dr. Oscar. I'd like to share this screen with you now so that we may conclude together with Professor Lucy, who is also a coordinator in our event. So from everything that was said here, when we began with the context, it is important, and actually both Professor Olivia and Professor Sylvia have raised this point, the way how nursing does contribute to SDG3 and its relation with other sustainable development objectives. This means a series of opportunities for nursing, especially the 3C goal from SDGs that refers to substantially increasing the funding for recruitment, training, and retention of health professionals in developing countries. And if we consider that nursing workers are oftentimes the very single human resource in contact with the users, really this investment will ensure access and quality of healthcare services. And then we have all of the guidelines by WHO that have been recognizing from the very beginning of this decade, actually even the end of the 90s, recognizing the importance of strengthening and investing in nursing and nursing within human resources. We also have this world strategy that establishes an agenda for 2030, always in relation with the SDGs. We've also heard about the global strategic guidelines for the strengthening of nursing and obstetrics. These guidelines have been established since 2016, and the very first set from 2016 to 2020, and now from 2021 to 2025. These will strengthen the importance of training for faculty. It also discusses the importance of academic quality for the institutional capacity strengthening in LAC, and also this establishment of alliances between schools, centers, north, south, south, south. In other words, the priority of policies with a focus in education and leadership investments. And as it has been said here, in order to have such leaders, you have to invest in doctoral programs that will value research, and this research will build robust evidences even about the construction and participation of nursing in healthcare systems. So with this strengthening for nurses education, this will require universities to value the graduate programs and the doctoral training will then allow for the development of knowledge and the transformation of science. So improving the quality will happen with competent professionals in the research process. So all of this reinforces the relevance of investing in education programs from undergraduate programs, as it has been said, also education and training and specialization, and also everything that has to do about doctoral programs in order to develop this research. So as Professor Sylvia has said, in the Americas region, nursing represents 56% of all of health professionals. It is the largest occupational group in the health sector. And the nursing strategic guideline in the region of the Americas, we have action line number 3, which refers to strengthening the quality of education in nursing. And this need was reinforced through the report on the World Nursing Status published in 2020, which speaks about the educational programs that may offer the necessary skills for quality health care focused on people. Without this, it is impossible for the countries in the LAC region to reach objectives such as universal health coverage and the SDGs. Now I'd like to give the floor to Elsie G. She's going to go on with these last comments. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you. From the beginning of the event, we've had around 370 participants, and this is really gratifying. And I believe it is worthwhile to note that 31 countries have registered and were represented here, which really enriched the discussions very much. Very well, then, individual experiences show challenges, and this event actually meets its general goal. However, joint strategies must be education policies from undergraduate studies to graduate studies. One should offer opportunities for agreements and partnerships because countries do have specific policies that have to be observed. Nursing schools must recognize the limitations and potentialities, and they must look for partnerships. Programs, associations, networks must look in the same direction as global strengthening. COVID-19 pandemic has shown the frailties of the healthcare systems and has led to setting up measures and strategies at an intersectoral level, such as mobilization, relocation, migration, as well as participative strategies. The nursing potential at all stages of healthcare. In other words, in each professional category, one must look at the connection between education, the labor market, and career paths, the relation between the different players, and the opportunity for leadership and workforce management for professional qualification, as well as investing in education, research, and scientific development in the nursing area. What about challenges and potentials? There is low education levels at the graduate programs in Latin America. The focus should be not only on schools, but on different healthcare services. We see that Brazil has 40 doctoral programs. 40 of them are academic doctoral programs and 2 of them professional programs. And we also have a concentration of such programs in certain geographical locations. So doctoral programs are not in the social perception of Latin America, and we might be now experiencing a historical moment that may drive some change and evolution. It is important to increase the number of nurses and their specialization degrees. The process of professionalization and the labor market may be a potential as an axis to strengthen the category. I'd also like to emphasize the scope of this profession's practice, having doctoral processes responding to the current challenges. That's why there's a need for actions at the local and regional levels. There is an urgency to convert research results from to practice, sorry. With regards to challenges, a lot has been said about funding. Those who have made comments on this have mentioned this difficulty, which is a common point. One should think about funding, about the competition with other areas. However, it is important to raise the level of awareness of students from the beginning in order to have all of us together fighting to raise funds. There's also a need to create strategies in order to look for such funds. There is a difficulty to maintain graduate programs. Thus, it is very hard for a program to be built, to be maintained, and also to keep its excellence. There are a lot of barriers against this, and it requires a lot of personal effort and commitment. With regard to infrastructure, this encompasses different aspects. I'd like to emphasize that it's very important when one thinks about partnerships, when one thinks about an agreement, the infrastructure of the partner institution, because this partner institution should offer support both from the academic point of view and the administrative point of view for that one student coming from abroad. So there's a need for support for his or her trip, the plans, legal requirements to remain in that country, issues related to the institution itself, housing, transport, enrollment, and so on. And of course, the academic aspects as well. So one should strive for a research project that will really bring results to one's original country. This is what is important. It's not a mere thesis defense. What is necessary is to bring something back to one's country and change reality, bring contributions, and the policy to implement careers, which was very much touched on as well. A few important perspectives for local activities, incentivizing the development of research, expanding research projects, supporting cooperation initiatives between university and healthcare services, focused on dissemination and transfer of knowledge and technologies, and studies that will guide these technologies. And one should also think about expanding dissemination so as to have the results accessible to all healthcare professionals. I'd like to thank you, and now I give the floor back to Dr. Carla Ventura. Thank you very much, Dr. Elucy. Tomorrow we're going to go on and discuss alternatives. On the chat, some people have asked about the questions for tomorrow. We will be debating alternatives tomorrow, and we will go on discussing the possibilities of cooperation. Again, we'd like to thank the participants, the members of the panel, those who have contributed to our discussions. On behalf of Dr. Sylvia, I'd like to thank the panel team, without which this event would not be possible. And also would like to thank our team at our nursing school in Ribeirão Preto. So let's meet again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Yes, thank you, interpreters. See you tomorrow. Are we going to take a picture? Yes, let's talk about later. Thank you. Thank you again.
Bye, everyone.